So is it complicated to manage 2 clusters or let's say hundreds or thousands? It really depends on how you can fully automate the management of the clusters. If you have the ability to fully manage everything, it could be easy to manage thousands of clusters. The only drawbacks that I see is when you have issues like nodes dies or the whole region dies for whatever the reason. On the opposite, managing 2 clusters is very easy because you only have 2, so there's less pressure into automating stuff. But at the same time, you are putting a high toll on your teams because if one of those 2 clusters dies, then there's a high chance that most of your application dies with itself. So I would say think about how you can automate as much as possible and then choose between 2 and let's say 100. There's always a balance in between. And it's always a matter of automating and how you can manage the D2 of all those clusters. So how should startups think about scaling? I would say start by making things very small. Get the ability to be able to scale very fast at first. It could be like using microservices, what we always hear, or it could be like thinking about how your application should be built, how it behaves, what are the integration that your application needs, and so on and so forth. But my first advice would be think about scaling at first. Don't think about scaling when you went into production, you have your application still deployed at once, and then think about, oh, okay, I can't cope with this traffic or how many users are connected to my application, and now I want to think about how I should scale. I would say think about very early in the process, very early when you design your application, think about scaling. This will ease the other processes around Kubernetes and around all this, how would I say, concerns about scaling, rather than having your application deployed, fully in production, and then thinking about, oh, I need to scale, how should I cope with it? So, what are the signs that will help you to find that your Kubernetes cluster is not well designed to scale correctly your applications? Honestly, it's a tricky question because one of the metrics that you can use is when the cluster's events are raising concerns about CPUs, about resources usage, and gives you some logs saying that, for example, for a simple example, you can't start more pods because, I don't know, you don't have any more IPs available in your subnet, or you don't have any more CPU power available, or you don't have any more memory available. Those signs will help you in identifying that there's some glitch in between and your application could not easily scale. How can I make sure that my application is made to be scaled and my Kubernetes platforms could scale easily? Again, I would say the easy way would be go to cloud providers. They offer all the mechanisms that helps you in having auto scaling for your nodes, and even having some kind of a virtual nodes that they can offer for a very specific short of time when you have high loads in your clusters. But it really depends on either if you're on private cloud, your own data center, how easily you can add power to it. But this could be tricky because you will have to buy hardware, you will have to make networks connections and all that kind of stuff. Think about backups also. So probably the fastest way to make sure that even if you don't really know how to scale, you are able to scale easily would be to work at first with cloud providers, then get some skills, raise skills in the team, learn by experiencing, and then choose if you want to stay in the cloud provider world or you want to move out and get into a private cloud, into your own data center. So thinking about scaling Kubernetes clusters, actually they exist a lot of tools, Cluster API, Crossplane that we can talk about. There's also Kamaji from Plastics that it's also very interesting. Tools, it's not really the issue because there are plenty of tools that exist outside in the ecosystem that will help you to manage your Kubernetes scaling mechanism. It's more about which tools answers your concerns and your team needs, rather than I want to use this tool because someone told me that it's shiny and very cool and blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. So a lot of tools exist. The tools that I often use are Crossplane, Kamaji, and the cluster API, even if Kamaji leverages the cluster API also. But again, don't hesitate to crawl the sevensphere landscape. There's a lot of tools that exist that can help you into managing, scaling Kubernetes clusters, and just make your own decision based on it. The question I've been often asked is, what are the top projects I'm involved into that are part of the sevensphere landscape? I have one in mind, a project called Falco from Sysdig. It's related to security, runtime security, but not also at the runtime level, at everything in the Kubernetes clusters. So nodes, obviously the system, application, networks, everything that happens in the cluster, this application or this framework of application, because Falco has Falco itself, its Psychic, and other plugins that you can add on top of it that will help. And they really help you into having a better view at the security level of your cluster and your applications, but also helps you into managing issues and I would say find something that's not easy to see, because for example, someone just tries to sneak out of your cluster from time to time and there's no real mechanism that easily detects it. The kind of tools like Falco detects that kind of behaviors through notification, and those notifications can also at some point triggers auto remediations, meaning there's a tools outside of Falco that you can use, and this tool will, for example, trigger killing pods, adding network policy to block this bad behavior.